One of the most practical and transformative ways that I've managed to decenter capital and systems of dominance in my life is oriented around how I develop my self-esteem. Growing up, I struggled with this sense of fundamental wrongness, not only a wrongness inside of me, but in how I looked, how I fit, and how I belonged in the world. And a characteristic of this fundamental wrongness was also this constant fear that people would find out about it. They would find out something in me was deeply defective, non-compliant, and broken. And this worked really well with the idea of self-esteem that I was raised under, that I was sold. Growing up in the 90s and 2000s, the image of body, the image of desirability, the image of respectability were all kind of saturating the culture. It was an era, a generation of self-help books and very exploitative call-in psychics. So in the same way that capitalism had commodified these very human needs, belonging, connection, love, intimacy, there was a grift for pretty much every version of that you can imagine. Spiritual gurus, call-in psychics, running scams. Every other commercial was some sort of diet plan, some sort of caffeine supplement meant to suppress your appetite or help you lose weight. And over time, I realized that these insecurities were manifesting in me and my behavior and my ability to perceive myself and hold myself in high esteem and also have healthy relationships. I realized that this system and the solutions it peddled relied on and required me to be in a constant state of fearful self-loathing. That a lot of these concerns and fears that I had developed were manufactured by an industry that was profiting off of them. It also put very deeply into me a narrative, a story, that the concept of transformation couldn't exist within myself and that I fundamentally didn't belong to myself. I spent almost 25 years of my life really feeling like I was at the whim of myself, that I was fundamentally untrustworthy, unreliable, dangerous, on the brink of being out of control all the time. And I used so many maladaptive tools to fix myself or fix this feeling that I had. The ideals of success that I was supposed to achieve, to obtain in my femininity and my work, the things I was supposed to have were always incredibly unattainable and out of reach for me. And so this led to the first 3/4 of my life being spent in a period of deep inadequacy and self-loathing. When I started to recognize these systems, I am a very literal thinker. So I actually spent a lot of time with the idea of self-esteem and the word esteem in general. The word esteem means respect and admiration. And so I made a list of people that I held in high esteem, right? People who I admired, that I respected, that I wanted to be like, that I wanted to follow the path of, or find myself in the same room as even. And I found a lot of the qualities that these people had actually couldn't be bought or sold. And I also found that the beginnings of these qualities I already had inside to varying degrees. I could think of times in my life that I had been brave. I could think of times in my life that I had been honest, transparent, loving, curious. The places that I would fall outside of my values, the places that I would fall outside of that belonging with myself often happened because I didn't trust myself, because I didn't trust myself to be different, to stand up, or to take the actions that I knew would kind of nourish me or fulfill me in the long run. When you think about being in your 20s, it's scary to be different. It's scary to do something that could cause you to not be fuckable, to not be beautiful, to not be interesting, to not be cool. And so I began this practice, this mind-numbingly simple practice that created the self-esteem that I have today. And again, when I say self-esteem, I'm not talking about an aspirational sort of concept of self that I work and train to be. I mean, becoming a person that holds myself, for the most part, in high self-esteem with a high level of admiration and respect. I realized the thing that I needed to work on the most was trust. So I created a practice of promise keeping. Every single day, I would make myself a promise. At first, it was really small things, like drink half a glass of water. Or it could be something larger, like take a 2-hour walk. So I would keep that promise, and when I met that promise, I would allow myself to intentionally call in a sense of pride and a sense of relief. The other important part is that when I set the promise, no matter how small or big it was, I would explain to myself why it was important to me. And sometimes it was only important to me because I would say, I have to do this stupid promise thing today, but that's good enough. So I would make a promise, set the reason for its importance, and then meet it and call in a sense of relief and of pride. And suddenly over time, I started to feel this overwhelming sense of security and safety within myself that I had never experienced. I started to find myself arriving differently in conflict in situations that I was uncomfortable with. I started finding my boundaries becoming so much more clear and easy for me to hold. I found myself liking myself more and feeling generally safe to occupy my own body and my own mind. I let go of this feeling that some part of my brain was like waiting to catch me off guard and destroy my life, or was secretly out to get me, some uncontrollable, unhinged, deranged part. And I realized that all of this value and self-worth that I was developing didn't cost me any money and was completely outside the self-esteem I had ever seen modeled before. There was no striving and no pain. On days that I didn't meet my promises, I didn't punish myself. What ended up happening was that over time, especially after calling in relief at my own ability to deliver on what I say to myself, of holding commitments to myself, of having kind of a sense of trust and honor and integrity with myself, I realized I felt safe in my own hands. It made it easier for me to stay close to my feelings when I was having moments of pain or discomfort. My tendency to overconsume, overtalk, to be dishonest went way down because I didn't feel that level of desperate insecurity. I didn't feel the need to compensate for something because I already felt at ease with this kind of quiet, differently shaped knowing. So I don't know if this is helpful to you, but I just think it's important to remember that if you're feeling wrong, if you're feeling off kilter, if you're feeling like some little part in your brain is trying to destroy you, that's not an accident. And there's billions of dollars being made off of this constant nagging sense of fundamental wrongness. And the fact of the matter is, we're wired for connection. We're wired for belonging. We're wired for fulfillment. And so we can obtain that in our life outside of the metrics and standards and values of dominance and violently based structures and systems. I think self-esteem and I think love and I think intimacy should always be made from scratch, because store-bought just won't do. And it's also not to say that we can't enjoy and indulge in the consumerism that we're sort of forced to be involved in anyway, but to do it from a place of discernment and to do it from a place of personal regulation, safety, and trust in oneself. It's a very different game and a very different animal.